Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. Cold, relentless, quiet in a way that feels more like warning than peace. Winter has always haunted human history, but there's a particular darkness reserved for the moments after death when the body still lingers, but the life has long gone. Tonight, we're not talking about how people survived the cold. We're talking about what happened to the ones who didn't. Before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you're watching from. I always love seeing where and when you've joined our quiet little classroom of sleepless mind. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background. Pull your blanket up just a little tighter, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Because our journey tonight isn't into war or royalty or revolutions. Not exactly. Tonight's journey. What happened to bodies in the freezing dead of winter? Imagine a time before central heating, before refrigerated morgues, before embalming chemicals in tidy little bottles. When someone died in the dead of winter, especially in the medieval world, or earlier, the body didn't quietly get wheeled into a climate-controlled chapel for a final goodbye. No, it lingered. Sometimes outside, sometimes in a barn, sometimes right there in the family's one-room home, too frozen to bury, too sacred to leave. The ground was ice. The tools were blunt. The rituals waited, but the body stayed. In ancient villages, the cold months turned corpses into statues, rigid, pale, sometimes distorted by the freezing process itself. Limbs stiffened into unnatural poses, eyes bulged slightly as moisture behind them expanded. Lips parted as the skin pulled tight. A face once familiar slowly transformed into something else, something uncanny, grotesque, and deeply human. And people lived beside them. There are records of bodies kept indoors for weeks, sometimes wrapped in cloth, sometimes just placed near the hearth, as if warmth might coax them back, not because anyone believed they'd rise again, but because frost had sealed the graveyard shut. Burials were delayed. Funerals were postponed, and grief took on a strange, unbearable shape, one that had to share a room with the very evidence of loss. In some regions, especially in remote, snowbound villages, families had to pile the dead in special sheds or designated corpse barns. The dead, frozen solid, were stacked like logs until spring came, and the earth softened enough to dig a proper grave. And as we'll explore tonight, it wasn't always peaceful. Animals didn't always respect these makeshift sanctuaries, nor did humans for that matter. The cold preserved, but it also exposed. So what really happened when a person passed away in the depths of winter, miles from the nearest churchyard, with no firewood left, and the wolves already pacing the tree line? Well, let's find out. You wake up, not in your bed, not in your time. There's a sharp ache in your back, and your breath clouds in the air above you, white, slow and curling like smoke. Your nose stings, your eyes water before you've even opened them fully. The first thing you feel is cold, not the modern kind, not the kind that makes you turn up the thermostat or pull your sleeves down. No. This is the kind of cold that settles into your bones, like it was waiting for you. You're lying on something hard wooden boards, you think, uneven and splintered. There's straw poking into your skin through the fabric of what you realize isn't your usual sleepwear. It's rough wool, damp in places, coarse enough that you feel the fibers scratching your arms when you shift. Above you, darkness. Except for a sliver of weak light coming through a crack in the wall. One crack. That's the room's version of a window. No glass, just a gap. You sit up slowly, every joint protesting. The air hurts your lungs as you inhale, not because it's poisoned or smoky, though it is smoky, but because it's so dry, so sharp. It feels like knives just under the surface of every breath. This is winter. Real winter. Historical winter. The kind where death walks a little faster, and survival is not a guarantee. You look around. The room you're in is small, no bigger than a tool shed. It's made of timber and packed earth, sealed badly with mud and straw, some of which has already started to peel away from the corners. You hear wind slipping through cracks in the walls. It whistles like it's trying to speak, or maybe scream, and you're not alone in the room. There are shapes, 2 of them, hunched under rough blankets. No movement, not even the rise and fall of breathing. You don't dare speak. Something about the silence makes you feel like if you make a sound, you'll disturb something. A smell lingers in the air. Not rot, not yet, but something older, sour, sweet in the worst way, like something trying to rot, but the cold won't let it. You inch toward the nearest figure. You know what you're about to see, even before the blanket slips away. A face, pale, too pale, lips slightly open, eyes clouded, frozen. You stagger back, dead, and not freshly. You want to scream, but even your voice feels frozen. You're in a death room, not a tomb, just a medieval winter bedroom, shared by the living and the dead. Because the ground is too hard to dig a grave, the room has no insulation, just timber slats nailed tight with hope and prayers. There's a hearth, but no fire, just grey ash. The wood's run out. You're lucky it's not colder, or maybe not. Cold keeps things preserved. You stumble toward the door, or what counts as one, a board wedged into a crooked frame, held in place with a latch made of twine. When you open it, the wind slaps your face like it's angry you left. Outside, a snow-covered village, grey, sunless sky, maybe 10 or 15 homes, all hunched low like they're hiding from the weather. There's barely any sound, no carts, no chatter, just the occasional creak of wood shifting in the cold, and the distant bark of a dog that sounds more like a warning than anything friendly. The world looks empty. You notice movement. A woman walks across the snow, bundled in what looks like every layer she owns. She's carrying a bundle of kindling. Her boots are just strips of leather tied around her feet. She's limping. When she sees you, she nods once, curtly. Not surprised to see a stranger, not curious, just tired. You glance back toward the door behind you. You know what's in there, and now you understand. In this village, in this time, in this deep, frozen winter, the dead stay longer than they should. No undertaker comes. There's no morgue, no freezer, no embalming table. Just cold air and packed snow, hard enough to shatter a shovel. You remember reading about this once, about how in centuries past, especially in places where the soil turned to rock and ice for months, bodies couldn't be buried until spring. So they were kept sometimes in barns, sometimes in corners of the house, sometimes in hastily built sheds, called corpse houses. Some were wrapped in cloth, others weren't. Some were covered in straw or salted if the family could afford it. Some were just there. You walk, crunching through the snow, trying not to slip. The wind stings your ears and creeps under your collar. The cold isn't just on your skin, it's inside you now, like it's part of you. You pass a stable. A man stands inside, coughing violently, trying to light a fire with trembling fingers. There are goats behind him. One is dead, frozen in a standing position. This is the kind of place where even animals die upright. You look toward the edge of the village. There, near the woods, is a long, low shed, roughly built. No windows. You know what it is before you get there. The corpse barn, a place to store the dead. when the earth won't open its mouth. You hesitate at the door, not because you're afraid of ghosts, but because you know what's behind it. You push it open. Inside, it's darker than dark. The light from behind you barely reaches the back wall, but you see enough. Rows of wrapped figures, some laid out, some stacked, frozen, preserved, waiting. Some are old, some are children. The smell is faint, like dried leather, smoke, and something metallic. A rat scurries past your foot. Even they don't stay long here. You step back, heart pounding. These aren't graves, they're shelves. Time has stopped in this building. Death came, but burial didn't. You shut the door, and for the first time you realize something. These people live beside death, not in fear of it, but in surrender to it. It waits with them, eats with them, sleeps beside them. Not metaphorically, literally. In the dead of winter, you don't bury your loved ones. You keep them until the earth thaws, until the ground is soft enough to take them back, and until then, you live around them. You share your breath with silence. You eat your meals beside what was once warm. You say your prayers with one eye on the body in the corner, and you sleep knowing it hasn't gone anywhere, because in this time, in this place, the dead don't leave when their hearts stop. They leave when the spring comes. You've barely caught your breath since waking. The cold still clings to you like it has a personal grudge, but the day must begin such as it is, because in this world, even in the face of death and ice, life trudges on. And it begins with food, sort of. You're not expecting pancakes, but even so, what you're handed feels like an insult disguised as nourishment. The morning meal, if it can be called that, is already set by the time you step inside the neighbor's hut, because in this village, nothing belongs to just one person, not even misery. The communal cook fire is still smoldering, its smoke stinging your eyes and nose. The air is thick, damp, and smells like wood ash, boiled turnips, and wet wool left too long in a corner. A child is squatting near a pot, stirring it slowly with a wooden spoon so worn down it looks like it gave up long ago. Whatever's inside isn't soup, and it certainly isn't porridge. It's a congealed mixture of barley scrapings and root vegetables, so old they've turned a colour that doesn't belong in the natural world. You're handed a chunk of bread, hard as stone, cold as your fingers. The woman who gives it to you doesn't speak. She just looks at you like she expects you to complain and dares you to try. You don't. You sit down on a log that's half chopped and half rotting. The floor is dirt, frozen solid. There are straw mats thrown down to pretend it's not, but they crunch under your feet. You chew your bread slowly, trying not to crack a tooth. It tastes like ash and dust. A little mold too, but mold's not dangerous when it's frozen. That's the logic, anyway. There's a jug of something nearby, wooden, hand-carved, patched at the base with a strip of boiled leather. You lift it. It's not water, it's ale. Watery, warm from body heat, and faintly sour. Children drink it. Old people drink it, because water here is a gamble. If it hasn't been boiled, it's likely been contaminated by runoff, animals, or the general cruelty of nature. The weak beer, on the other hand, has been fermented. That means it's safer, not enjoyable, just safer. Your stomach turns a little, but you drink. There's no real eating here, just consuming to stay upright. The food is fuel, not for strength, but for survival. Calories are all that matter. Taste is a luxury for warmer people in warmer times. And now that your jaw has thawed slightly from chewing, it's time for the next bitter ritual. Cleaning yourself. Or trying to. There is no bathroom, no sink, no tiled floor, no steam, no scented soap in bottles with gentle branding. Here, hygiene is conditional, and in winter it becomes brutal. You're directed outside, behind the home, to a wooden trough filled with what used to be water. Now it's a slab of cloudy ice with a crust of snow settled on top, like frosting on a cake that's been left out for 3 weeks. Someone has already broken the surface with a stick. You use your fingers. They burn instantly. You suck in a breath so fast your lungs revolt. You scoop up a handful of slush. This is your wash, your morning ritual of cleansing. Not warm towels, not a hot shower, just the act of scraping yesterday's sweat and soot from your face with water so cold it might as well be punishment. There is no soap. That's for the rich, or for monasteries. You've got a cloth if you're lucky, a rag, frozen stiff, which you rub along your arms and neck. It doesn't clean, it just redistributes the dirt. You remember something you read once, that in old villages people rarely undressed fully to bathe in the winter. Too dangerous. You'd freeze before you got clean, so you do what they did. You clean what's visible, face, hands, maybe neck. Everything else stays under the clothes, and the clothes stay on for weeks. Your breath is fogging again. You pause for a moment and try to feel something, anything other than cold. But that's the thing. You don't feel the cold anymore. You've passed that stage. Now it's part of you. And then you notice the others, men and women, huddled around the hearth, dipping their fingers into pots of rendered fat, rubbing it onto their skin. It's not vanity. It's protection. In the absence of proper lotions or salves, people smear animal fat on exposed skin. It seals in what little heat the body can keep. It keeps the wind from stripping your cheeks raw. It doesn't smell good, but neither does anyone else. A young boy has rubbed lard onto his lips, nose, and forehead. He looks glossy, pale, like a wax figure, but he's smiling because he got the good stuff, the pig fat. Not the rancid goat tallow scraped from yesterday's stew pot. You're handed a little lump, greasy. You hesitate, but then smear it onto your cracked knuckles, and you understand. It's awful. And it helps. Your teeth ache, not from cold, but from neglect. Toothbrushing? That's not a thing. Not really. If you're lucky, you've got a birch twig to chew. It scrapes the plaque off, sort of. If not, you rub a bit of salt on your finger and go to work. There are no dentists here. Teeth rot in real time. You see it in the villagers' mouths, black stubs, swollen gums, the occasional brave soul with a single molar left doing all the work of chewing. Someone spits outside, and a tooth comes with it. No one reacts. This is winter hygiene. It's not about being clean. It's about not falling apart completely. And still, there's a strange kind of order to it. People do what they can. They comb lice out of their hair with carved wooden picks. They air out their linens when the sun shines, which it hasn't in 3 days. They scrape under their nails with bone slivers. They rinse their mouths with ale or vinegar when they can afford it. Because while death waits, dignity still matters. At least, a little. You look around again. It's easy to feel like this world is barbaric, cruel, filthy. But the truth is, these people are fighting the cold, not just with fires and blankets, but with ritual, routine, resilience. Every bowl of gruel, every frozen washcloth, every chew of a tasteless root, it's defiance against the frost, against the darkness, against the long, heavy arm of death reaching through the cracks in their walls. And for now, just for now, the living are still alive. You're standing there now, still shivering from your bath, if we're being generous. The sky outside has turned that dull iron color featureless, sunless and flat. Snow is falling again, not fluffy postcard snow. This snow is hard, wind-blown and mean. It comes at an angle, sideways, like it has somewhere to be, and you're in the way. So you go back inside because it's time to get dressed. And in this time period, getting dressed is less about style and more about preparing for battle. First, your base layer, a linen shirt. It's thin, itchy, and always slightly damp. Not because anyone spilled anything, but because dampness just lives here now. In the walls, in the floors, in the very seams of your clothes. Dryness is a rumor. Moisture is permanent. Over that goes a tunic. Wool, handspun, dyed a brownish-grey colour that could optimistically be called mud. It's coarse enough that it scrapes your arms when you move, but it's warmish. The key word being ish, because no matter how many layers you wear, there is always a way for the cold to find you. It seeps through threadbare cuffs, it wiggles under your collar, it travels through the stitching like it paid rent. If you're lucky, you have a second tunic. Not to change into heavens, no, just to wear over the first one. Your version of winter fashion is layering until you lose your peripheral vision. Then come the hose. Not pants. Hose. 2 separate tubes of wool, one for each leg, tied to a belt around your waist. They never quite stay up, and you're constantly yanking them back into place. The crotch is open. That's just how they're designed. Breeches may be added underneath, if you own them. If not, congratulations. You're a human draft tunnel. Next, the cloak, or cape, or blanket, honestly, because by now, names don't matter, only warmth. This one is made of thick wool, heavier than a wet dog and twice as smelly. It fastens at one shoulder with a wooden pin. There are no buttons, no zippers, just layers and hope. Your boots are more theory than reality. 2 pieces of roughly stitched leather, tied at the ankle with twine or rope. No soles, no tread, no insulation. You fill them with straw or old rags to keep your feet from freezing. It works for about 10 minutes. By now, you're wearing nearly everything you own, and you're still cold. Now for the fun part. There are fleas in the seams, lice in the collar. You can feel them shifting, surviving, just like you. Washing clothes in winter is dangerous. You might clean them, but you'd never get them dry. So you wear them dirty. All season, the dirt becomes insulation. The grime, your armor. You don't fight it. You accept it. If your hands are lucky, you have mittens made of wool, or, if you're really fortunate, sheepskin. If not, you wrap them in cloth, or keep them under your arms. Fingers aren't guaranteed out here. People lose them like buttons. And the hat? The hat. Usually a rectangle of wool tied around the head, or a felted hood that hangs over the shoulders like a soft medieval helmet. It keeps the heat from escaping out the top of your skull. That's where most body heat vanishes, they say. Of course, so does hope. You're dressed now, properly, still freezing, and you look like a walking bale of fabric. But it's not the clothes alone that keep you alive. It's shelter. So let's talk about that. Your house, if you can call it that, is a one-room structure held together with mud, timber, and superstition. The walls are made of wattle and daub thin sticks woven like a basket, then smeared with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung. The medieval version of insulation. Yes, you're literally sleeping inside poop walls. Congratulations. The smell never really goes away, but you get used to it. Sort of. There are no windows. Not really. Maybe a hole in the wall, covered with oiled parchment, or a scrap of linen, if you're fancy. Otherwise, just a shutter that you prop open during daylight and bolt shut at night. And the roof. The roof. Thatched, sagging, occasionally leaking. If it snows too heavily, the whole thing groans like it's rethinking its life choices. You've seen houses collapse in winter, people trapped inside, buried, frozen. It happens. There's a hearth in the center. That's your heating system, a fire pit with no chimney. The smoke curls upward and finds its way out through the roof, or doesn't. Sometimes it just hovers in the room, making everything you own smell like meat that was never actually cooked. It's a mixed blessing. The smoke chokes you slowly, but it also kills the fleas. Pick your poison. The floor is dirt, frozen solid in the corners, damp in the middle. Straw is scattered over it to soak up the wet and pretend it's not just a frozen swamp in disguise. After a few weeks, the straw becomes compost. You add more on top. You never clean it out. That's spring's problem. There's no privacy. Everyone sleeps in the same room. Kids, parents, cousins, maybe the goat if it's sick. You sleep close together not because you want to, but because human bodies generate heat. Your blanket? 1. Heavy wool, shared by 3 people, maybe 4. Don't move too much or you'll create a draft. And don't sleep near the wall. That's where the frost grows. You've seen it. White patterns climbing the wood like delicate death fingers. Some people sleep beside the fire. Too close. Clothes catch. Hair smolders. Accidents happen. Burns. Then infections. Then death. There is no safe place here. Only warmer and colder. Closer and farther from survival. Outside, snow piles against the walls. Inside, the walls sweat. You look up. There's a rafter where meat used to hang before the winter took the last pig. Now it's just dust, cobwebs, and memory. This house, it's not shelter. It's a shipwreck half buried in ice, pretending to be a home. But it's all you've got. And somehow, in all this, people manage to smile, to sing, to pray. Children still play. Old people still mutter stories. Someone carves a whistle from a bone. Someone else laughs, quietly, at nothing. You wonder how. And then you realize it's because they have no choice. Because here, in the freezing dead of winter, shelter is not protection. It's resistant. You huddle close to the fire. The smoke makes your eyes burn. Your fingers are cracked. Your toes have gone numb again. But the roof is still up. The walls haven't collapsed. And you're not the coldest thing in the room. Not yet. You step outside. And the air hits you like a slap. Not a brisk breeze or a sudden chill. No, this is a full-body assault. A wall of frozen wind that wraps itself around your bones and whispers, you shouldn't have left the fire. But you did, because no one in this world gets to sit still, even in the heart of winter. Not unless they're dead. And even then, not always. So you get moving, your boots crunch across the snowpack. Your breath fogs in front of you, drifting and curling like smoke from a dying chimney. There's no sun, just the cold, colourless sky pressing down like a lid. Everyone's already up. The village doesn't wake. It never really sleeps. A woman is hauling a bucket of water from the frozen stream, the rope biting into her hands. A child is breaking ice off a trough with a stick that's half frozen to his fingers. A man is chopping wood so aggressively it looks like he's mad at the tree for surviving this long. And you, well, you're expected to earn your existence. You ask what needs doing. The answer is simple. Everything. Survival in the frozen months doesn't pause. It gets meaner. There's firewood to cut. Except the trees are half dead. And the wood is green. It smokes. It spits. It refuses to burn, but you chop it anyway. The axe is dull. The handle is splintered. You have no gloves. Your fingers go numb. You keep swinging, not because it's fulfilling, but because not chopping means no fire. And no fire means you become just another frozen shape someone else has to stack in the corpse barn. Then there's water, hauling it, breaking the ice, carrying it in wooden buckets that leak along the seams. By the time you get it back to the house, it's half ice again. You don't drink water. You fight it. It's a chore, a hazard, a trickster that freezes solid right when you need it. You stomp across the yard to the animal pen. That is, if the animals are still alive. The chickens are sluggish, feathers puffed, eyes half closed. The goat is lying down, unmoving. You don't want to check. You've already buried or tried to bury 3 others this week. There's no soft earth. You can't dig. You pile them with snow and say a prayer. Later, when the thaw comes, you'll try again. If you're a man, you're expected to split logs, haul hay, clear paths, mend fences, trap game, and break up ice with a pickaxe that's seen more winters than you have teeth. If you're a woman, you do all the above and then some. You also cook, tend children, sew layers onto threadbare tunics, spin wool with numb hands, melt snow for laundry that will never dry, and try to keep the baby warm with nothing but body heat and good intentions. You're all laborers now. Everyone. Children don't play. They carry firewood. They chase off scavenging dogs. They stuff moss into cracks in the wall. One girl cuts her hand trying to chop kindling and hides the blood under her sleeve. She knows what a wound means this time of year. Infection doesn't wait for spring. There's no real job here. There's just what needs to be done before someone dies of cold or hunger or both. You help repair the roof on the neighbor's hut. You stand on an icy slope with one foot planted on a log, trying to wedge straw under the thatch so the snow doesn't cave the whole thing in. Every movement is dangerous. One misstep, and you fall wrong, and you break something in winter, and you die. There are no doctors, no hospitals, just herbs and hope. One of the older men twisted his ankle a week ago. He hasn't stood since. His leg is turning colors. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. He won't make it to spring, and still the work continues. You help bury the chamber pots, even though the ground fights you. You dig into snow, then into frozen earth, then give up and just cover it over with more snow and a whispered apology to your future self. Sanitation is a luxury. Your hands are cracked. Your lips bleed when you smile. But there's a rhythm to the work now. A brutal, simple rhythm. Move, lift, break, carry, repeat. There are no breaks, no weekends, no clocking out. Even rest is earned one breath at a time. And then there are the really grim jobs. Sometimes the dead can't wait for spring. A woman passed in the night, her body curled by the fire. Too young to go, but not strong enough to stay. Her husband is too stunned to move. Her children stare without blinking. You're asked to help. There's no ceremony, no choir, just a handful of neighbors wrapping her in cloth and carrying her to the shed out by the tree line, the corpse barn. You try not to look as you place her down beside the others. Some are frozen into strange positions, arms outstretched, mouths open, eyes that never closed. They wait here stacked and preserved until the thaw. Some stay until April, May, longer if the spring is late. It's not disrespect, it's reality. Even death waits its turn out here. You return to the living with cold in your fingers and silence in your chest. You chop more wood, feed the animals, fold cloth, scrub pans with handfuls of snow because there's no water left in the bucket. It's all work, all the time, because the work keeps your heart beating, not figuratively, literally. If you stop moving for too long, the cold finds you. If you don't sweat, you don't stay warm. Rest is dangerous. Rest is an invitation. At night, you collapse by the hearth, muscles trembling, head heavy. Someone hands you a cup of hot broth. Thin, mostly water, but hot. You sip it like it's wine from heaven. Your shoulders twitch from the strain. Your back aches. Your feet tingle in the way that's less about recovery and more about early frostbite. But you're still alive. And in this world, that makes you rich beyond measure. The wind howls outside. Again, it's night now, or at least you think it island. In winter, the sky doesn't really change. Morning is grey. Afternoon is grey. Night is black grey, like someone turned the volume down on the whole world. You're inside, beside the fire. The same fire that threatens to go out every few hours unless someone feeds it. And across the room, an old woman is whispering to herself, words you don't recognize, words not meant for conversation. She's praying, not the way you might think of prayer. This isn't polite, kneeling supplication in a church pew. This is closer to bargaining, to pleading, to bartering with powers that might be listening, or worse, might not be. Because in a winter like this, the dead aren't the only thing that lingers. Fear lives here too. Sol du superstition. You ask someone carefully what she's saying. A young man leans toward you and answers quietly, without looking up. She's asking the frost not to take her grandson, and suddenly you understand. In this world, winter is a god, not a metaphor, not a poetic phrase. A god, cruel, hungry, and always watching. People here pray to their saints, yes, but just as often, they mutter charms to the wind, or leave small offerings near doorways to keep the shadows from coming inside. You've seen them bundles of herbs hung above thresholds, charcoal crosses drawn on walls, bread crusts set on windowsills, bits of string tied around a child's wrist to protect against the cold sleep. Crew, because death in winter doesn't feel natural. It feels stolen. Some believe that souls get trapped when the ground is frozen. That they can't pass on. That the body isn't just waiting for burial, it's waiting for release. Until then, the spirit stays close, wandering, watching. That's why you never speak the names of the dead at night. That's why the corpse barn is kept locked with an iron nail driven into the door. And that's why, when someone dies, the mirrors are covered, the windows are sealed, and no one whistles after dark. Because sound calls them back. You learn fast that religion here isn't confined to church walls. It's everywhere. In the way people speak, the way they dress, the way they pause, mid-task, to whisper thanks or warnings to saints and unseen powers alike. The village church is small, stone, always colder inside than out, but people still gather clutching their cloaks, their hands, their hope. The priest has a beard that looks like it's been frozen more than once. His voice is cracked from shouting over wind and funerals. His sermons are less about grace and more about endurance. God tests us, he says, as frost gathers on the altar. Those who endure the winter shall rise in the spring. No one says amen. They just nod, quietly, grimly. Some carry rosaries. Others carry talismans, bone, iron, carved bits of wood painted with symbols older than the priest's Latin. There's a tension between the two, official religion and old belief, the church and the forest. And in winter, the forest often wins. You hear tales. Everyone has one. Of lights seen in the trees, wrong lights, flickering blue-green when no fire burns. Of voices calling from snowbanks, imitating loved one. Of frozen corpses that shift positions. Of wolves that watch but do not attack. You're told not to look directly into the woods after sundown, and never, ever follow footprints in the snow, especially if they lead away from the village with no signs of return. Those are spirit tracks, they say, not left by people, left by something else. And if you step in them, you're next. The priest says it's nonsense. Pagan leftovers. The mutterings of frightened peasants. But he still sprinkles holy water on his door before bed, and he doesn't whistle either. You ask about ghosts. The answer is immediate. They don't wait until you're dead. You laugh nervously. No one else does. Because ghosts in this world aren't see-through women in long dresses. They're the memories of those who died badly. They're the cold that never leaves a room. They're the weight on your chest when you wake up at night and can't move. People don't talk about ghosts like legends. They talk about them like weather reports. Don't go near the old well. Don't sleep in that corner. Don't say his name before dawn. Even funerals are shaped by fear. If a body must be kept through the winter, a candle is lit beside it every night, to light the way for the soul, to keep it from wandering. If the candle goes out, someone relights it. Immediately, no questions asked. Some families tie the feet of the dead together, not tightly, just enough to keep them from walking. Superstition? Maybe. But when the ground won't let you bury your dead, you start believing in other ways of keeping them still. The night deepens. Outside, the wind knocks something off the roof. Inside, everyone flinches. A child starts crying. A man mutters a prayer through chattering teeth. Someone throws another log on the fire, more out of fear than heat. And you realize these people don't just survive winter. They negotiate with it. They treat it like an ancient king, cruel and capricious. They placate it with labor, offerings, and reverence. They fear it, they hate it, and in a twisted way, they respect it, because to deny the power of winter would be suicide, and to mock it, worse. Before bed, you're handed a piece of iron. Put it under your pillow, the woman tells you, just in case. You don't ask what case she means. You just nod, slide it beneath your head, and try not to listen too closely to the creaking in the rafters, or the wind that sometimes sounds like a voice, or the quiet footsteps crunching snow somewhere behind the barn, because in this world, the dead don't rest easy, and neither do you. The sun, or whatever counts as sunlight, has disappeared behind a veil of thick, indifferent clouds. Evening settles over the village like a wet wool blanket. The sky dims, the temperature drops, the air gets sharper. You feel it in your teeth. But inside, the house is stirring. The work is done for now. Firewood is stacked. Tools are stored. Animals are fed or buried. Children are huddled in corners, their faces pale and raw-cheeked from the cold, and someone is cooking, or at least trying to. There's a pot over the fire. Iron. Old. Its bottom has seen more seasons than most people here. It hangs over the coals on a swinging arm, bubbling faintly with something that smells vaguely edible. You lean in, hopeful. It's a stew, the medieval kind, which is to say, it's water, a bit of barley, a few turnip skins, some dried beans that never really softened, and a mysterious grey chunk floating near the top that might have once been meat. You ask what it island. Someone shrugs. If it doesn't move, it's dinner. The stew is ladled into wooden bowls one by one. No seconds, no refills. Everyone gets the same size portion. That's not fairness, it's survival math. You sit near the fire with the others, holding your bowl with both hands like it might warm your soul. It doesn't, but it helps your fingers. You take a bite, it's hot, salty, bland, a little smoky from the wood ash that fell into the pot earlier. You chew slowly, carefully, because a cracked tooth out here is a death sentence in disguise. But still, it's food. It fills you. It matters. A man to your left dunks a hunk of black bread into his stew to soften it. The bread is older than some of the livestock, but with enough liquid, it becomes chewable. Barely. The ale is passed around again. Flat, thin, but warm. You drink. No one speaks while eating. The fire crackles. Spoons scrape against wood. The only other sound is the occasional cough, deep and rattling. From the corner where the sick lie under layers of old blankets and damp straw. After the meal, the bowls are licked clean. Literally. There's no water to spare for washing. The same cloth is used to wipe each one, folded in half each time, like it makes a difference. You feel full. Not satisfied, but full. And that's a victory. Then, something rare happens. Someone stands up and begins to speak. A story, An old one about a fox that stole bread from a bishop, disguised itself as a monk, and got away by hiding in a barrel of sauerkraut. It's ridiculous. No one believes it. And that's the point. Laughter bubbles up. Quiet at first. Then more. Someone slaps their leg. A child giggles and snorts. Even the man with the cough smiles through his rattle. Because in this world, after food, storytelling is the second most important form of nourishment. Nor books, nor instruments, nor plays. Just stories, told aloud, remembered, shared. They range from folklore to memory to outright lies, told for entertainment. Ghost stories are common. Animal tales too. Tricksters, saints, sinners, lost lovers, headless monks, and talking cows. If it makes the room forget the cold for 5 minutes, it's worth telling. Games are rare, but not unheard of. 2 children play a hand-slapping rhythm game near the fire. They keep the beat on their knees and palms, laughing when one misses. It's silly. It's meaningless. It's medicine. Older folks trade riddles. Someone takes out a bone die and rolls it in the ash, calling out fortunes. It doesn't matter if it's true. You'll find a coin in the snow. You'll meet a stranger with red boots. Everyone smiles, because it's better than silence. In warmer seasons, entertainment meant festivals, dancing, singing, market squares, drunken poetry contests. But in the dead of winter, it means not dying and laughing anyway. Taverns, if your village has one, are cold and crowded. Mud floors, frozen spills. Someone plays a fiddle with 3 strings. People drink to forget how cold their feet are. But here tonight, it's just the fire, just the family, just the little flickering warmth of togetherness in a world made of ice. Someone pulls out a tin whistle, plays a tune, wobbly, off-key, but haunting, a folk melody about a girl who froze, waiting for her sailor lover. They find her in spring, smiling. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. You drink a little more. The ale is weak, but on an empty stomach, it hits fast. And for a brief moment, your limbs loosen. The fire feels warmer. The cold steps back. Just a little. You forget the corpse barn. You forget the woodpile. You forget your aching hands. And for a heartbeat, you feel almost human. People lean on each other. Someone hums. A baby fusses and is rocked back to sleep with a lullaby older than memory. And then, slowly, the warmth fades. The fire dies down. No more wood to feed it tonight. People settle under blankets. The laughter softens, the shadows lengthen, but the stories linger because they're not just entertainment, they're protection against despair, against silence, against the kind of darkness that seeps into your mind and whispers that spring will never come. Out here, joy is a kind of rebellion, a defiant, a middle finger raised in the face of cold, famine, death, and gods who don't answer. And so you sleep, with a full belly and a thin smile, because tomorrow the wind will wake you again. But for tonight, you were warm, and that matters more than you'd ever thought it could. You wake to the sound of coughing, not the dry, polite kind. This is wet, ragged, deep. You open your eyes and find the fire nearly out. The room is colder than ever. Ice clings to the edges of the walls, white veins crawling through the corners, like the house is slowly freezing from the inside. The coughing doesn't stop. You sit up. It's coming from the other side of the room, behind the piled blankets where the old man sleeps. Or used to. You're not sure yet. You wait. The wheezing stops. Pause. Then nothing. No breath. No rattle. Just stillness. No one moves to check. Not yet. Because this is normal. The sick day at night. That's what they do. Not always. Not every time. But often enough that when the silence comes, you don't rush to confirm it. You just listen, wait, hope you're wrong. But you're not. Someone eventually goes over, peels back the blanket, sighs, pulls it back over the man's face. No one cries. Not now. Not yet. They'll bury him in spring. If the ground allows, you whisper a prayer. Not because you believe it will help, but because everyone else does. Because here, death isn't dramatic. It's routine. There is no medicine. Not really. Not by today's standards. If you're sick, you're treated with what the villagers have: herbs, roots, fire, and faith. In that order, or sometimes all at once. The healer, an old woman with more wrinkles than teeth, keeps a bundle of dried plants tied to her belt and a pot of something always boiling near her hearth. She believes in garlic for infection, mustard poultices for cough, hot wine with rosemary for fever, and prayers for everything else. You visit her once, when your fingers go numb for too long. She rubs them with goose fat and ash, wraps them in rags, and tells you to keep moving. Stop moving, and they'll blacken. You don't ask what comes after blacken. You already know frostbite is common. So is infection. A cut from a splintered axe can turn fatal. A sore throat can become something worse. You see people with swollen jaws, open sores, cracked skin, and missing fingers. You don't ask questions. You don't want answers. The healer has no scalpels, no medicine bottles, no bandages sterilized in neat little wrappers. She has cloth soaked in vinegar and knives boiled in water if there's time. Toothaches are solved with pliers and courage. Fevers are sweated out beside the fire. If you're delirious, someone holds your hand and murmurs to the saints. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you get better. Sometimes the fire pulls the fever from you and you wake up sweaty, shaking, alive. But not always. More often you weaken, stop eating, stop speaking, and then stop. There is no cure for pneumonia or sepsis or dysentery. Not here. Not now. And the worst part? You never get privacy while you die. You don't get a clean bed, or a quiet room, or a moment to say goodbye with dignity. You die inches from your neighbors, your spouse, your children, and when it's over, someone lifts your body, wraps it in cloth, and places you in the back room, or in the shed, or, if there's no space left, in the snow, covered, weighed down with stones so the animals don't find you. This is why people fear winter, not for the cold alone, but for what it prevents. Winter steals the rituals. There's no funeral procession, no church bell, no grave, no flowers, just time, and silence, and waiting. The healer believes that death in winter traps the soul, that if the body freezes before burial, the spirit becomes restless. That's why she lights candles, why she burns herbs in the room after someone dies. Juniper, mugwort, pine resin, not just for the smell, to cleanse the air. She says illness is sometimes a spirit, that it can pass from one person to the next, not through breath, but through grief. That the dead call to the living. You don't know if it's true, but you light a candle anyway. Even the priest, who scoffs at her pagan nonsense, still blesses the house with holy water after a death. Just in case, children die the most in winter. It's said so plainly, it almost doesn't sting. His lungs weren't strong. She stopped eating. The fever took her in her sleep. No one screams. No one collapses. They just bury it deep. Or try to. Grief has no time to bloom when the ground won't open. One girl, no more than 10, develops a rash that spreads. Her skin turns purple, then black. The healer tries everything: poultices, chants, even bloodletting. Nothing works. Her mother holds her through the night. In the morning, she's gone. Her mother doesn't cry. She just wraps the child herself, hands shaking, and carries her to the barn. You help open the door. There's barely room left. The other bodies shift slightly as you make space. Some have faces still visible, frozen, silent. You place the child gently. You close the door, and then you go back to work. Because that's what this world demands. You work, you endure, and you hope that tonight the coughing doesn't come from your corner. Or if it does, that someone will light a candle for you too, and say your name when spring finally comes. You'd think the cold would stop everything, but it doesn't. It just slows things down, makes them heavier, more painful, more cruel, and the weight lands hardest on the backs of women. The village is full of them, mothers, daughters, widows, girls not yet old enough to be any of those things, but already shouldering labor meant for 2 grown men. In this world, being a woman means work, and not the kind with rest days or wages. It means rising before the sun, before the fire is lit, before the water has been broken loose from its icy crust. It means serving food you didn't get to taste first, tending wounds you can't afford to complain about. It means survival, but quiet survival, behind the scenes, beneath the noise. You see it in their hand, dry, cracked, red, knuckles split open from cold water and harder work, fingers stained from herbs, ash, blood, no gloves, no help, just expectation. A mother wraps her infant in 2 layers of linen and 3 layers of worry. The baby is quiet, too quiet. She puts him near the fire, checks his breath with a hand under his nose, then goes back to stirring the pot. No tears. Not yet. Not unless she has to. A girl 12, maybe 13, is mending clothes with a needle so small it might as well be imaginary. Her stitches are careful, quick. She doesn't stop when her fingers bleed. She just wipes them on her apron and keeps going. She's not sewing for dolls. She's sewing to keep her brothers from freezing to death. There's no school, no playtime, no daydreams. Childhood ends early here. If you're old enough to walk, you're old enough to carry firewood. If you're old enough to stand, you're old enough to help butcher a frozen pig. If you're old enough to bleed, you're old enough to marry. And many do. Because in a world this unstable, a womb isn't just a part of your body, it's a resource, a responsibility, sometimes a curse. Pregnancy doesn't wait for spring. It comes when it comes. You hear it one night, a scream muffled under layers of blankets and shame. A woman is giving birth. There's no hospital, no midwife with a gentle voice and sterile gloves. Just a neighbor, a bucket of warm water, a knife, cloth torn from an old tunic. The room smells of sweat, blood, and smoke. The birth takes hours. The wind outside howls like it's trying to take part in the ritual. Eventually, there's a baby. Small, red, not crying yet. Everyone holds their breath. The mother doesn't speak. She's too weak. The helper rubs the child's chest, taps its back, murmurs something desperate and old. Then, finally, a sound. Thin, sharp, alive. The room exhales, but the mother's eyes don't close in relief. She knows better. She's seen babies die before the next meal. She's seen mothers bleed out quietly under their blankets, while the world outside keeps freezing, never noticing. For her, birth isn't joy, it's a coin toss, a wound, a gamble against the cold. And now she has one more mouth to feed. There is no maternity leave, no cradle, just a strip of cloth to bind the baby to her chest, and a prayer that he survives long enough to see grass again. Family life here is not soft. Fathers work from dark to dark, if they're alive. If they're not, it falls to the eldest son or to no one. Siblings share everything. Blankets, clothes, bowls, lice. They sleep in piles, not for affection, but for warmth. The closer the bodies, the better the odds of not waking up with frost in your lungs. Marriages are practical. Romance, if it happens at all, is accidental. You're paired based on land, livestock, or proximity. You marry young, you have children fast, you hope none of them die. Some always do. A child with a cough is a countdown. A child with a fever is a funeral in waiting. A child with nothing wrong at all may still not wake up tomorrow. You see one mother trying to warm her son's feet by the fire. She removes his shoes, if you can call them that, and presses her own hands against his toes. They're blue, not quite black. She begins to cry, silently, and then she stops. Not because the moment passed, but because she doesn't have the time. The fire needs more wood. The porridge is boiling over. Another child is crying. She wipes her face, wraps the boy's feet in cloth, and keeps going. You ask if people ever talk about their grief. The answer, only when they have the luxury. Mourning is an indulgence. It requires time, space, energy, all of which are spent surviving. So grief gets folded into the fabric of daily life. It's baked into the bread, rubbed into the firewood, stirred into the stew. It's not expressed, it's carried. And yet, somehow, there is still tenderness. A father hums a lullaby while skinning a rabbit. A sister combs lice from her brother's hair with more care than you'd expect. A grandmother rubs her grandson's back with goose grease and herbal oil, murmuring a blessing under her breath. It's not sentimentality, it's function. But even so it matters, because in a place where people freeze, break, and vanish without warning, love is a kind of resistance. Families hold together not because they're happy, but because they must. They are the last structure still standing when roofs cave in and woodpiles run dry. They are warmth, memory, and if nothing else, company. So you sit close, you watch, you listen, and you realize this isn't just a story about death. It's a story about the living, about the women who endure, the children who adapt, the families who refuse to disappear even when winter does everything it can to erase them. And as you drift to sleep, wrapped in borrowed wool and surrounded by breathing bodies, you begin to understand just how hard it is to stay alive. It's afternoon, but you'd hardly know it. The sky is thick and low, like it's pressing down on the village. The wind never really stops. It just changes tone from howling to hissing to silence. And silence, you've learned, is worse. But the day doesn't care. There's still work, still people moving through the frostbitten routines of survival, and still conflict. You hear it before you see it. Raised voices, sharp, angry. A man shouting about missing firewood, another swearing he never touched it, someone else warning them to shut up or take it outside the fence. Because here, survival is shared until it isn't. Winter forces people together, into cramped homes, into shared work, into borrowed tools and dried up tempers. And when space is short and food is tight, so is patience. Disputes are common over everything: bread, salt, blankets, whose goat got into whose shed, who used more than their share of wood, who pissed in the wrong part of the snow pile. None of it is petty, not really, because every resource matters. Every handful of grain is a calculation, and so arguments grow sharp fast. No one's violent, not right away. It takes energy to be violent, and no one has much to spare. But the threat is always close. You see a man grip his axe a little tighter. You see another spit on the ground and walk away. You see a woman slap her son across the face, not out of cruelty, but fear. He broke the pot that held the last of their lard. Sometimes conflict doesn't explode. It seeps. Passive punishments, silent refusals, a family suddenly excluded from the evening meal, a sick child left off the prayer list, a borrowed cloak never returned, and no one says why. You ask someone if there's a sheriff or a leader, They laugh. Bitterly. There's a reeve, a sort of village headman. He's old, blind in one eye, more a keeper of memories than a keeper of order. People come to him with disputes. He listens, nods, offers advice wrapped in riddles and weather proverbs. It works. Sometimes. Other times, justice is handled by group pressure, or not at all. Stealing is punished harshly. If you're caught, you're made to stand barefoot in the snow for hours. Not by law, but by ritual. It's not about reform, it's about shame and the message, we are all suffering. You don't get to make it worse. If you steal food, it's worse. Some are beaten. Not publicly, but everyone knows. The bruises speak loud enough. One woman caught hoarding salt is told she'll receive none at the next feast day. She nods like it's fair, but her face stays hard. There are darker punishments too. You hear whispers of exile, not often, not formal, just someone not welcome anymore. The door no longer opens for them. The pot no longer has a spoon for them. And in winter, exile is a sentence. You ask what happens to those people. No one answers. You ask again. One man shrugs. They leave. Where? He doesn't look at you. Not here. That's all. But it's not all bad. You see people help each other too. A woman gives her last onion to a sick neighbor. A group of boys help repair a collapsed shed, even though it's not theirs. One man trades an extra fur lining for a carved spoon shaped like a fish. It's lopsided, beautiful, useless. But that's the point. Even in this frozen place, kindness still flickers, but it's fragile, because under it all is fear. Fear of hunger, of disease, of the dark. Fear that spring will come too late. Fear that it won't come at all. And fear makes people strain. Paranoia grows like mold, quiet, slow, and inevitable. You hear rumors of witches, of curses, of people who invite the cold in through their dreams. One child falls ill after playing near the woods. The healer says it's fever. Someone else says it's tree spirits. The next day, the trees are avoided. No one says why. A goat gives birth to a stillborn kid. A woman is blamed. They say her breath is too warm, that it causes miscarriage in animals. She's asked to stay in her home for 3 days. Not by law, not by force. Just asked. She agrees, because to refuse is worse. This is how social order works here, not by rules, but by agreement. Silent, heavy, cold agreements. There is no police, only eyes, only memory, only the knowledge that next time you might be the one they whisper about. You see one man drink too much, staggering through the snow, shouting at no one. The next morning, he's not at the fire. No one asks where he island. Someone says he was seen heading toward the woods. No one goes after him, because out here, self-destruction isn't rebellion, it's surrender. And survival doesn't make room for those who surrender. Not for long. You help patch a fence. Your hands bleed again. You don't tell anyone. You help hang meat to dry, even though it's already half frozen. You take your turn fetching water, and every time someone looks at you, you wonder, do they see you as one of them yet? Or as someone they'd exile if the food ran low? Because that's what winter does. It tests more than the body. It tests the village. And sometimes the frost isn't the sharpest thing out here. Sometimes it's the people. You've seen death in the daylight. You've hauled firewood past frozen bodies. You've heard the stories whispered into smoke. But all of it feels different now. Because now it's night. And in this time, in this place, night is not just an absence of light. It is the return of everything the day tried to hold back. The fire is already low. You sit near it. Too near. Your knees burn while your back freezes. You can hear breathing. Not yours. Not just yours. Everyone in the room inhales the same way, shallow, cautious. There are 6 of you on the floor, 2 on a bench, 1 old. Wheezing stays wrapped under wool and silence. You sleep close, not for affection, but for strategy. Bodies produce heat, and out here, bodies are the last defense against death. You wrap yourself in your blanket, scratchy, damp. You curl in on yourself, head tucked down, trying not to breathe too much of the sour air, because even your breath feels dangerous now. Like if it's too loud, it might invite something in. There is no lamp, no lantern, just the fire, dying slowly. And as the light fades, the fear rises. Not loud fear, not panicked, not dramatic. This fear is quiet. It arrives like mist under the door, like frost forming on your boots while you sleep. It's the fear that something will happen, and no one will hear it. Or that you will hear it, and no one will believe you, because night in the dead of winter is long, and the darkness doesn't behave. You listen for sound, the wind moaning through the cracks in the walls, the whistle of snow swirling under the doorframe, the drip slow and steady of meltwater from the roof, where ice has begun to thaw from the inside heat. Even that is a luxury. And then you hear something else. Footsteps, not heavy, not close, but definite outside, crunching, slow, pausing, crunching again. You freeze. No one else stirs. Or maybe they're all pretending not to hear it. Because pretending is safer. The footsteps stop. Silence. You wait, eyes wide, adjusting to the darkness. There's nothing at the window, but you know someone or something was out there. You've heard the stories of frozen spirits who knock on doors and mimic familiar voices, of dead family members who walk the paths they once took to the fields, of things that do not speak, only watch, waiting for the fire to go out. You don't believe any of it until night comes, because something happens when the light disappears. The walls seem thinner, the air heavier, the silence sharper. You shift, trying not to make noise. Someone beside you mutters in their sleep, a name, a prayer. You don't recognize which. A baby whimpers once, then is hushed by a mother's trembling hand. And the old man, still not moving. You wonder if he's sleeping. You wonder if he's not. And if he's not, what happens next? Where will they put him? The barn is full. You imagine him frozen, stiff as wood, mouth open in the shape of his last breath, eyes clouded. They might leave him where he island, wrap him in cloth, wait for the thaw. It's happened before. You've heard of people waking up beside someone who died hours earlier, not realizing until morning, because in the cold, the dead don't decay. They just pause. You think about the shadows on the wall, how they move when the fire flickers, how sometimes they move when the fire doesn't, and then you hear it again. Not footsteps this time, a creak from the ceiling, from the doorframe, or from the rafters where food used to be hung, or where, once, a thief was found frozen in place, hiding, too weak to escape, too scared to beg. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to not see. Sleep comes slowly. It's not peaceful. It's not restful. It's more like losing consciousness. You drift, float, slip beneath the surface of fear into something darker. You dream not of spring. You dream of the corpse barn, of eyes that don't blink, of lips that move, of a body that was supposed to be still, standing by the door, waiting to be let in. You wake up gasping. The fire is out. The room is black. No one speaks. You hear rustling, someone reaching for kindling, blowing gently, trying to coax flame from ash. Then it catches. A flicker, a glow, a heartbeat of warmth, and the world returns. The room is still here. So is everyone. You exhale, but something has changed. Someone is missing. The old man. Gone. You ask. No one knows. The door is open just a crack. Snow has blown in. Did he walk out? No footprint, no sound, just gone. You don't ask again, because asking means opening the door wider, and tonight, no one wants to see what's beyond it. You curl up again, tighter this time, because the darkness might be leaving, but not yet. And death? Death is never far. Not here. Not in winter. You don't sleep. Not really. You close your eyes and hope the night passes. Because in this world, the morning isn't guaranteed. It has to be earned. You're still here. The sun is rising. Barely. It doesn't burst over the horizon. It creeps. A dim, pale light, like the sky is embarrassed to be seen. You're wrapped in wool. Your bones ache. Your mouth is dry. You survived another night. There's no cheer about it. No celebration. Just breath. The fire has been coaxed back to life. The snow hasn't stopped falling. The air still hurts when you inhale. But you're alive. And here, that's enough. Someone stirs the coals. Someone else stirs a pot. A child shuffles across the room, half asleep, dragging a strip of cloth behind them. The old man from last night never returned. No one mentions him. Maybe he wandered. Maybe he froze. Maybe he never existed at all. And your fear invented him. No one knows. The corpse barn is full. The ground is frozen. The wind is sharpening its knives again. But you don't think about that now. Not yet. Because now, as you sit near the fire, the others asleep or pretending to be, you finally have a moment to feel something. Not fear, not hunger, not even sadness. Gratitude, not the bright, beaming kind. Not the kind sung in churches or written in books. This is quiet gratitude. The kind that doesn't smile, that doesn't speak. The kind that just sits there with you, wrapped in the same blanket, staring at the same fire. You made it through a night that, for many before you, was the last, and you'll do it again, and again, and again, until the snow melts, until the frost recedes, until spring remembers that you exist, until the ground softens, and the bodies can finally be buried. You think of them, the ones waiting, stacked in barns, sheltered in sheds, wrapped in cloth and tucked beneath straw, frozen in the very pose they died in, their last expressions preserved like wax. Some peaceful, some not. You wonder if they're still here in some way, if they linger, caught between seasons, if they watch, if they remember, if they envy your breath. And you realize something. The people in this world, the ones still moving, still eating, still splitting wood and whispering prayers and making stew out of scraps, they are not weak. They are not primitive. They are relentless. They survive not because they are stronger than death, but because they've learned how to sit beside it, how to eat across from it, how to fold its presence into daily life and carry on anyway. They know that death is coming, but they refuse to go quietly. Not yet. Not today. And neither do you. Your muscles soften. The chill no longer feels personal. Your breath slows. There's a comfort in knowing that even the darkest night ends, even in places like this, even in winters like these. And tomorrow, if the fire holds, and the stew lasts, and no one coughs too hard, you'll wake again. And you'll do it all once more. But not now, not tonight. Because tonight, the story is over. You're back in your bed now, somewhere warm, somewhere quiet. No snow against the window. No corpse in the barn. No pail of frozen water waiting for your hand. Just silence. Just rest. So take a deep breath. Let your jaw loosen. Let your shoulders drop. And remember, you don't have to wake up in that time. You don't have to eat hard bread beside frozen strangers. You don't have to live in fear of footsteps in the snow. You don't have to fight off the frost every single day. You live now in a world where death doesn't sleep beside the hearth, where the ground always opens, where the darkness ends with a light you can switch on So tonight, as you drift off, be grateful for blankets that don't smell like smoke, for water that flows when you turn a handle, for medicine, for heat, for solitude, for safety, and above all, for not being born in a time when winter didn't just chill the living, it held onto the dead. So rest now. Breathe. Sink deeper. Let go. The cold won't find you here. You're safe. Sleep well.